Welcome to the Formidable Path, where we talk about the things that most people avoid, the doubts we hide, the battles we carry, and the ways in which they shape how we chase what we really want. Here, we find your current and flow with purpose. I'm James Seastrom, Navy veteran and certified coach, who is walking down this road right alongside you. I'm glad you're here. Let's dive in. Welcome back. It's been a little while, longer than I expected, but life, right? Before I jump into the show, please don't forget to subscribe so that you don't lose any episodes, and please like and share. If you've been with me from the beginning, you know this show as the Be Formidable podcast. But like most things, there's an evolution, and today I'm bringing you something different, something that reflects not just who I am now, but who I'm becoming, and a journey that I believe so many of us are on. Before I get into all of that, I'd like to recap where things were at with the Be Formidable podcast. When I started the Be Formidable podcast, it was created with the intention of bringing guests on who have faced adversity head on, that they had battled with identity, resilience, and purpose. People who had done this internal work, often quietly, where no one could see the battle and where no one could see how big of the battle that might have been. Then I stepped away. It wasn't because I didn't care. It wasn't because that this was too difficult, but because life pulled me into a transition of my own. I went on a road trip with my son, which was absolutely amazing, and so glad that I got to do that. But there was also something else in the background, and it was happening while I was doing the podcast. And it was just something that I was trying to push through, but it got to a point where my energy had been consumed, and it shifted into a life of a fight for survival, and the type of fight that most people never see. And so, if we're being honest, I think most of us are carrying a lot more weight than what we admit. We're pushing through, head down, and putting on a mask of bravery and strength, because that's quite often what society rewards, especially men who are taught and trained at an early age to put the armor on, push through, and to battle the demons, right? Put on this armor, bury the emotions, certain ones, right? It's certain ones, but to focus on the mission, their responsibilities, and their duties. We're often not taught how to label what we feel, and we don't express it or expose it. And it becomes a point where it becomes difficult to ask for help. When we do reach out and we ask for help, if it's met with silence or if it's not met with the need that we are expecting, it creates even more distance, feelings of internal struggle that happen within. And so that's what the Formidable Path is. It's opening the door to conversations that we probably should be having, and uncovering truths that should be talked about, and moving from a path of isolation to living life together through our shared struggles. I could have done that all with the Be Formidable. So why the change into being formidable and having a formidable path? I wanted Be Formidable to be this rally cry that life could be a wonderful thing, that it could be highlighted through our values, and it could be something that you have created formidably in your mind and in your heart to be true to who you are. However, after leaning into my own life and those experiences that I'll share and coaching others, I've shifted my perspective in that we don't need another voice to tell us to be strong or to be brave or be courageous. That's not what we need. Even though that's not what I meant by be formidable, it's easy to extrapolate that messaging from be formidable because of everything we're taught. And so I thought to myself, what could be a better way? What could be another way for this? And so instead of asking people to be formidable, what if we started having conversations about stepping onto the formidable path that people don't really want to walk down, myself included, but it's the path that we need, right? And formidable is something that can instill fear. has many different definitions, but it can be daunting, intimidating, and arduous synonymously with those types of things. And so therefore, let's walk down this path of healing, but admitting that this is definitely a path that we don't want to go down because of what it can bring up. For those that I've been coaching, the struggle that most have isn't about weakness, it's about misalignment. It's about being separated from who they are and who they want to be. This causes a sense of just feeling stuck, caught between two different areas in life because the life that they're living or we are living doesn't match who we are or who we are becoming. And so, how do you even know if you're misaligned? We hear it all the time if you're misaligned, but there's never really any kind of defining things, and they can be different for everybody. But you can know when you're misaligned when everything feels heavy, when you don't feel like you're living your best life, when your path that you were on just now seems completely foggy. You can't see the end of it, or you don't even know if you're going down the right one. When your energy is completely gone and you feel like you're just going through the motions and you feel like purpose is lost in the noise of life, that everything just simply is existing and you feel like this small cog just between the wheels of life. And so why now, right? After dealing with my own situation, which I'll dive into in a bit, I started really listening and watching others, having conversations, reading, and diving into what causes this misalignment. And so really it came through those that are in transition, whether they've lost their careers, lost their identity, after service, after, divorce, leaders who are completely burned out from their jobs, not knowing if they want to even do that job anymore, fathers who feel completely disconnected from their kids, athletes who have suffered serious injuries that have taken them out from being who the team expects them to be. And when I say all that, what comes to mind for you? What do you hear? Because for me, underneath all of that, if we were to group all of that together, what I hear is that I don't know who I am right now. In all those instances, it's just, I don't know who I am right now. The identity is at an inflection point that they face head on. And when you face it head on, the inner critic shows up. The inner critic is the voice that knows us best. It knows us better than anyone. It knows our weak spots, our fears, our failures, and it can quickly consume every little bit of white space that is in our brains. It tells us that we weren't good enough. It tells us that we failed. It tells us that we disappointed everyone. It tells us that we won't be able to recover, that other people are going to laugh. Other people are making fun of us. We're going to lose our jobs. We're going to, our child wants another person as their parent. It can be saying all kinds of different messaging. And that voice is so loud, not because it's screaming over the top of everything else, but it is able to cut through the messaging of everything else. So it just seems the loudest. And it isn't there because you're weak. Even though the messaging that it's telling you might seem that way, it's there because you're out of misalignment. It's there because you don't know who you are in this moment. And so I'll dive into the inner critic a little bit more in this episode, but definitely in future episodes that will fully explore. But it's showing up now because the old map isn't working. And when the old map stops working, the path feels completely overwhelming. And even more, when you create a new map, but you use an old legend, then now it's confusing. It's frustrating. It's not able to understand the direction that we're supposed to be going because we're still using an old legend with this new thing. And so the new direction of this path, the Formidable Path, is that we walk together. Each week I'll, explore some of the following, and whether it be alone or with a guest, we'll be discovering how to find your current, discover your true values, your identity. What can you do to help you uncover your purpose? What makes you you? Energy leadership, how you show up, right? Whether you're drained or you're empowered, to discover what things in your life are working for you and what's not. What do you need to let go of so that you can show up as the best version of yourself? Performance readiness. And I'm not talking about the gym. I'm not talking about how much you can lift or how fast you can run, or, in the line of service, of being a more resilient military member or in combat or officer. I'm talking about performance readiness in your life, in your relationships. The inner critic, discovering how to shift the voice, the one that's tormenting you, but is also, there to help you. How can you create it to be more in line with who you are and who you want to be? A little sneak preview into the inner critic is that it is actually just trying to help you. It's trying to protect you, even though it doesn't seem that way. Right? That's what it is trying to do. Men's mental health. There are plenty statistics out there that show that men are in trouble. Even if we don't want to admit it, even if we don't want to talk about it or show it, that there's things out there that aren't working. So we're going to explore some of those statistics, maybe some of the changes, hopefully have conversations with people that are in the field doing the work. So we'll have stories of transitions, alignment, and identity work. How you can not only help yourself, but how your story, the story that you might have been bearing and continuing to bury, can actually encourage and help others, can empower others. Have conversations with people that are shaping the future generations. Educators, parents, coaches, and leaders within the community that are doing the work to be able to highlight what kids are facing now and maybe some of the issues that they're going to have later in life. And so I'm not here to be a therapist. I'm not here to give clinical advice. The conversations aren't clinical. This podcast is really from a coach's perspective on how to move forward in the human journey. And more importantly than a coach's perspective, it's just a person's perspective that's going through this journey with you. To have real conversations so that we can step out of the shadows. So diving into my own story, or at least part of it anyway, to share. And this has never been anything that I've shared publicly, really in depth with anybody, I don't think. I share this only to highlight how things can be or feel. And it's from my perspective. Again, it's not therapeutic advice, right? I'm sure I've made plenty of mistakes in this journey. And so if you're having thoughts of harming yourself, please contact 988. Get help from local suicide crisis lines. You can also text 838-255. You can call 911. And I know that there's other organizations. I'll try to tag some of them in the comment section. This is not easy to admit. It's probably the hardest conversation that I'll have for the near future. So I may struggle to get some of this out, but please bear with me. I heard another, Brene Brown always seems to come up, like just right when I need her. I don't know if you feel that way, but this quote she mentioned is that courage is the ability to show up and be seen when we have no control of the outcome. And I just thought, wow, like vulnerability can be such a powerful thing, but it's fear. It's fear to be vulnerable and tell people something when you don't know what's going to happen. You don't know how people are actually going to take it. And that's one thing I've learned about life, is that we don't get to choose the version of ourselves that people walk away with. And so there's been 3 key moments in my life that I thought about ending it all and taking my own life. The first was in 5th grade, which is crazy to admit, is
like, I can't even believe I'm saying that. Like, it's weird to say that when I look at my 12-year-old boy and I see his spirit and his freedom and his energy. And I just think about where I was at his age, and we are not the same. Like, um, and so glad we're not, like I was at a point where I didn't feel like I fit in. I didn't feel like I fit in anywhere. That I felt very disconnected from a lot of people, family included. And I believe that the pain that I had and those feelings that I had were just so large that I would never be able to let them go, and then I was gonna have to carry that till it was over. Um, in 2012, I was stationed in Hawaii, and I got to a point where like I had a couple of bad relationships. I had one relationship with a girl that like I thought she was the one, man. I thought for sure she was the one. We dated for a while. Like I talked to her dad, which definitely did not go as planned. Maybe you'll hear that story sometime. Just felt like love had passed me by, and that I was not someone to be loved. Like I was to help others find love, but I wasn't to find it for myself. And this third time was definitely the most darkest time. It was the most thought out. I think it was definitely a point in my life that had everything had taken over. And so um, I had believed I was a failure. I believed that I was a disappointment to everyone around me. And I truly believed that I was doing people a favor. People wouldn't have to worry about me. People wouldn't have to think about me. People wouldn't have to be concerned by me, the things that I had told myself. And so it's very painful to admit all this. And sure, I'll get into it again at some point. But yeah, this past year was definitely the darkest. And so I had gotten to a point where I was writing letters, right? I was in the process of setting things up, and I was in the next step of figuring it out. I had a plan of what I was going to do. Um, but I was in the process of trying to figure out how to execute that plan and mitigate as much emotional damage as possible. I really didn't want people to feel like they had let me down. I really didn't want people to feel like it was because of them that I had done this. And so it all kind of started back in October of last year. When I thought things were coming together, they were falling apart, man. Um, I was finishing up a leadership program with a nonprofit, and for veterans, I had made a difficult decision to quit my job so I could focus on coaching full time and so I could help family. Um, And I was hopeful. I had a lot of hope and a lot of zest about what was going to come in 2025. And a month after that, a month after I quit my job, um, my wife and I got into an argument, and it got to the point where she told me we needed a break. And so we tried to sell our house. Market obviously sucked and couldn't sell the house. We're living in the same home, separate bedrooms, and trying to go through all that. Bills were stacking. Business wasn't taking off. A lot of that, I think, was because I just didn't have the energy to put forth towards the business, and trying to show up and be present for other people was excruciatingly hard. Um, I applied for jobs, rejection after rejection, and every door seemed to get slammed harder than the last one. And so at the time, at the beginning of all this, I was doing the podcast, so just trying to really show, not show this, not allow this to come through. And so, I had reached out to network for help, but the support I had hoped for and needed it didn't come, and I didn't need help with my feelings. Really didn't. I knew where I was at. I had enough emotional intelligence to be able to understand where things were. Like I needed help with my situation. And the best way, like I like to talk in analogies and put things into a sense of a perspective that people might understand. And so this analogy works for me to explain this. I don't know if it'll work for you, but imagine walking into a gym, and whether you've never lifted weights before or whether you have lifted weights, you go in, you talk to the guy, you're like, okay, where's the bench? You find the bench press, you go over to the bench press, you put what you think you know you can lift on or what you know you can lift, and you're lifting. And you get to a point where it is stuck on your chest. You are actively pushing to get it up off your chest. You're telling yourself, come on, man, push, 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 push. Everybody around you is telling you, just lift it up, man. Just lift it up. Come on, you got this, right? They're cheering you on. They're motivating you. They're like, the dude's over you, like, dude, just lift it up, man. Come on, you got this. You got this. All you got to do is push up. All you got to, you're like, I know I got to push up, right? Like, I'm here. I got this. Like, just push. And you're just all your might, right? And so they go and they get the biggest dude in the gym to come lift this bar up off of you. And he gets over there and he's like, all right, bro, just push, man. You got to push. Like he's the motivator of motivators. Like, come on, right? You got it. But it's just like, yo, dude, like I need your help, right? And you're pushing, everybody else is telling you to push and nothing's happening until he reaches down and grabs the bar and starts to lift. He has to take an actionable step to interject into your life. That's what I needed. I needed help with my situation. I needed actionable steps for somebody to come in and say, I got you. Let me support you. Let me be someone that can help you lift up this bar. Not let's talk about how to get the bar off of you. And so that is, I think, really what it was for me. And maybe for some of you that are going through something similar, I didn't need to talk. I didn't need another therapist. I didn't need another psychologist. I needed the actionable support of someone. And so I don't hold grudges against any of those that I reached out to. And because everyone's facing their own battles, right? Maybe they didn't know how bad things were for me because I didn't share it in a way that they could hear it to understand how bad things were. And that's okay. Right? It's not on them. Right? They have their own capacity limits and their boundaries on how they can show up and when they can show up. And to be quite frank, sometimes the weight that we carry is heavier than what others know what to do with or how to help carry that load. Right? We can't expect people to be there all the time. But I do think that in the moment of all of that, in the thickness of the fog, it definitely left me feeling alone and lost. And so what I would encourage you, if you're listening to this and you're someone who maybe somebody has kind of reached out for help, or maybe they've hinted at some things, is be honest, right? If this is the point, this is the path, it's the shared path. Because if I just tell you my side of what I'm seeing on the path and you're not on the path with me, you have no idea where we're coming from. So share what's going on. Maybe you have personal stuff going on that you need help with. Maybe your capacity limits aren't there at the moment. And it's not that you don't care. It's not that you're inept. It's just that you're stretched. But being open and honest about what you're willing and able to be in a moment when somebody is sharing a very sensitive and exposing message, the worst thing you could do, I think, is to just disappear, right? To not be there to help because they've reached out to you for a reason that they believe you can help. And if you can't, or if you're unsure of the help that they need, get clarification, right? That's all. But on the flip side, if you're someone that is reaching out to someone, be mindful of where they're at. You have no idea what's going on in their life. Have some compassion and sympathy for them. Don't hold the grudges against them just because they you can't be there at that moment doesn't mean that they're not going to be there for you in a future moment. And we'll dive into an episode where I talk about communication and having clear communication on the stories that we tell ourselves based on the interactions or reactions of others. So, but moving along, what pulled me back from the edge wasn't just a single point. There was uh, small, very small handful of friends that I'll call BALM, BALM. Those are their initials. And so they checked in, right? Without ever, I think, without ever really knowing where I was at. I know one of them definitely knew where I was at, but this group, they were concerned and they checked in with me. They listened, they offered resources, and they even like were sending me jobs, right? And it wasn't like overly, it wasn't crazy of like crossing the line of sending jobs, because I know that that can get old from previous experiences with people. Like, they just got job application after job, and it's just like, okay, enough, I got it. But they did it in a very lovingly way. And they even, I know that they had conversations with people within their companies, and they would send me jobs that I didn't even qualify for, right? Like I would tell them like, dude, I don't qualify for this. Like, who cares? Try it. And that support, right? The feeling that they believed in me more than what I could believe in myself, knowing that they were out there like looking and helping me, it was just enough. Right. And so that kind of kept the ball, it kept kicking the can down okay, next week, right? As I talk about the plan of ending things, like it just kept kicking the can, right? I had talked to a couple of family members on how bad things had gotten, talked about the what I had done. It was a chance for me to tell them what I was doing, what I had done, what I had thought about, kind of small wins that it helped, because I wasn't just giving up, right? And they were there kind of being my weird cheerleaders. And, I'm kind of grateful they were, even if all hope seemed lost and out of reach, they were there. Another thing that, combined with this is my wife eventually set me down on the couch and she just broke into tears, man. Like just full on tears. Here's the person that told me that they didn't think that we could be together, but was also sitting across from me and just telling me how much they cared about me and how much I meant to them. Excuse me. I don't think she knew about the letters. I don't think, but I know that she saw what was happening. She saw the days I couldn't get out of bed. She saw all of this like numbness and the distance that I was creating between everybody, even my son. And so this was all happening in front of her. And, what was weird is, I guess not weird is, but I was completely sober through all this, man. No drugs, no drinking. It was just the weight of everything I was carrying. I don't know if it was just me or if there was godly intervention that was giving me the strength. But I knew deep down that if I were to start drinking, if I were to get involved with drugs, that was it. There was no chances of coming back. There was that everything was going to be gone. And no, it sounds strange. Was already making plans. I had kind of some things in motion, but I think it was honestly like I didn't want to die, but I wasn't seeing any hope. I felt completely lost as and inept as a provider, as a father, as a contributor to society. I didn't think that anything was going to work, but I'm extremely thankful that I had the strength to not turn into that I stayed away from it, because had I started down that, I don't know if I would have come back. The last thing that really kind of pulled me out of it was doom scrolling through Instagram in bed, which I know is a no-no. Like if you're listening to this, don't do that. Don't be in bed doom scrolling. It's horrible for you. But I came across Chris Williamson's podcast. I think on IG, his handle is Chris Will X. And he made a comment. He said 91% of middle-aged men who commit suicide had already sought help from the very services that we tell men to use. The same services that I mentioned before. But he went on to say that something isn't working. And it was in that moment that I, for the first time in a long time, right? When I think about everything that had happened over the past year, it was the first time that I felt like a hand had just yanked me out of the fog, man. Like it was just like, it pulled me out of that heaviness and just said, you're not alone, right? You are not alone. And a weight just kind of left. And I was just like, how did I get here? Right. And so it forced me to look backward to see how I kind of got to where I was at and what I wanted to do about it. And in 2022, after 20 years in the Navy, that was shaped by mission, discipline building, resilience, and the unspoken expectation that kind of rewards just figure it out. I assumed I'd be fine, right? When I got out, I had support. I thought I had a good sense of identity. I had transition organizations that were there to help me. But the truth is I had no idea who I was. I had pushed so hard about not letting the uniform define me that I never truly existed. I was somewhere in between. So I lived my entire career on this fence and I found success, but I was disconnected from things that would have made me me. I was afraid to be who I was in uniform, and in the real world, I didn't know how to not be the person in uniform. I didn't have passions. I was essentially emotionless. I lacked a real purpose, and myself, like I was just numb. I had moments and glimpses in my life where I shone through of me being me, but I had distracted myself and avoided any real internal work because I was fine. Like I was getting by, right? Like I was doing what I needed to do. And so when I left the service, I had no idea who I was. I didn't know what I loved doing. I had no idea what I was passionate about. No idea like what what I enjoyed to do and my purpose. When I was out of work, I drank and played video games and partying in my earlier years. But it kept me from feeling the weight of any trauma that was developing. It kept me from seeing how unhappy I really was living this life in between worlds. And in doing so, this inner critic that I've talked about before became the strongest, sharpest voice I had. It told me to be small, told me to shrink, not cause waves, just put my head down, avoid risk, just get through, be invisible. And then the voice that I let run my life while trying to listen to this thing, it was damaging it. It was destroying my life. It blocked connections, it shut down opportunities, wrecked my home life. It limited me as a leader and as a father, as a husband and son. And ultimately, it just kept me from being me, myself. And so that's why this podcast exists. Going back and discovering how I got to this point, hearing Chris's statistic is like, I wanted to do more. This is my purpose. I've always enjoyed coaching, mentoring, motivating, and finding ways to help people discover who they are and who they can be. That is something that I've just been passionate about since I was younger. At 16, I had this is going to be crazy. Like at 16, I preached at a Baptist church about not silencing the youth and their gifts from God. And I stood in front of a congregation at 16 years old and gave this presented this sermon to the church elders and people who had been going to church many years before I was born and saying, hey, you need to look at us. God gave us gifts to use. Start nurturing them young now while we're young instead of just saying you're not old enough. So I've been born to do the work of helping people. But somewhere, I decided that that wasn't my purpose. I somehow felt that I wasn't passionate about that because I didn't have X degrees or I didn't have this certification. I haven't done X, Y, Z. So I started limiting myself, but we're here, right? The path, this is the path. And that's what the podcast is. This is the path that I wish I had started sooner, that I had known sooner. It's the conversations that I needed, the tools that could have changed everything. And so as we begin the formidable path, here's what I want you to know. It's not a straight line. It's not a get from point A to point B. This isn't a quick fix. I'm not here to create some checklist for you to did that. My life should be going the way that James says it should be going. No, this is just a simple journey, man. This is a deeply human journey that digs into frameworks, stories, structures, developing your inner critic that helps you instead of hinders you, and dives into your purpose, identity, and not only building resilience, but how to use that resilience. The goal is not to motivate you, but to equip you. Because as you may know, and as I know myself, motivation fades when the feeling fades away. Tools change lives. When you give somebody a tool and teach them how to use it, it can change their life forever. And then the great thing is that they can pass that tool down to somebody else. And so if you're a veteran, father, leader, athlete, or just someone who is quietly fighting a battle that no one knows about, this podcast is for you. I am so glad you're here. Thank you for listening. Thank you for being on this journey with me and having the courage to step on the path. We have a lot of work to do, and we have a lot to build together. Join me next week as we begin the journey, and welcome to the Formidable Path. Please don't forget to like, subscribe, leave a comment, and if you have found this useful in any way, please share it with someone that you know. Thank you.